The morning sun rose over Viridian Prime, turning the endless ocean into a sheet of liquid gold. Princess Kalira stood at the bow of her ceremonial yacht, her blue skin gleaming in the light. She wore the traditional hunting robes of her people, decorated with pearls from the deepest trenches of her world. Behind her, the royal flag snapped in the wind. Today was the Festival of Tides, an ancient tradition where the royal family hunted the great silver fish that migrated through the Sapphire Archipelago. Kalira had been preparing for this day for months. At 20 cycles old, this was her first hunt as lead huntress, and all eyes of the Thessian Empire watched her. On the deck beside her rested Aramis, her water lion. The massive creature was nearly as tall as Kalira herself when it stood on all four legs. Its fur was deep gold, darker around the mane that circled its powerful neck. Gills opened and closed along both sides of its throat, allowing it to breathe both air and water. Its paws were the size of dinner plates, with webbing stretched between each toe and razor-sharp claws that could tear through steel. Kalira had owned Aramis since he was a cub, purchased from the finest breeders in the Empire. He was a symbol of her status, a creature worth more than most commoners would earn in their entire lives. She kept her hand resting on his head as the yacht cut through the waves. "Princess, the hunting grounds are ahead," called Captain Vornis from the helm. He was an old sailor. His scales faded with age, but his eyes still sharp. Kalira nodded. She could see the other yachts of her hunting party spread out across the water, each carrying nobles and their servants. Her mother, Empress Velana, watched from the grand imperial ship that followed at a distance. This hunt would prove whether Kalira was worthy of ruling one day. Far across the water, on a much smaller vessel, Sergeant Jake Morrison watched through a pair of binoculars. The human survey ship was supposed to be mapping the ocean currents, but Jake could not help watching the alien ceremony unfold. He had been on Viridian Prime for 6 months now, part of the human diplomatic mission, and he still found the Thessians fascinating. "Still spying on the royals?" asked Lieutenant Commander Patricia Donovan as she stepped onto the deck beside him. She was his commanding officer, a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Just observing, ma'am," Jake replied, lowering the binoculars. "It's quite a show." "It's their most important cultural event," Patricia said. "We were lucky to be allowed anywhere near it. Don't do anything to mess up our relationship with them." Jake nodded, but he raised the binoculars again as soon as Patricia walked away. He watched Princess Kalira standing tall on her yacht, the water lion beside her. Something about the creature reminded him of Max, his German shepherd back home. He missed that dog more than he cared to admit. The hunt began with a series of horn blasts. The Thessian nobles released their tracking creatures into the water, small dolphin-like animals that would locate the silverfish schools. Kalira's yacht moved forward, Aramis pacing excitedly on the deck. The water lion could sense the hunt beginning. For an hour, everything went perfectly. The tracking creatures found a massive school of silverfish, and the nobles began their traditional fishing with spears and nets. Kalira herself speared 3 of the largest fish, each one longer than she was tall. The crowd on the Imperial ship cheered with each catch. Then the sky changed. Jake noticed it first. The clouds that had been white and fluffy began to darken rapidly, turning the color of old bruises. The wind picked up, going from a gentle breeze to a strong gust in seconds. "Storm coming in fast," called out Henderson, the human ship's weather officer. "Really fast. This isn't normal." Patricia grabbed the radio. "All personnel, secure everything. We've got extreme weather incoming." Jake turned his binoculars back to the Thessian vessels. They had noticed too. The hunting party was turning back toward shore, but the storm was moving faster than their ships. The wind howled now, whipping the ocean into angry waves. Kalira gripped the railing of her yacht as it began to rock violently. Aramis crouched low on the deck, his claws digging into the wood to keep his balance. The sky had gone almost black and rain began to fall in thick sheets. "Secure the artifacts," Kalira shouted to her servants. Below deck were the sacred hunting relics, items passed down through her family for 1,000 years. They were priceless, irreplaceable pieces of Thessian history. A massive wave crashed over the bow, and the yacht tilted dangerously to one side. Aramis roared, the sound mixing with the thunder. Water poured across the deck, and Kalira heard a terrible cracking sound. The mast was breaking. "Abandon ship," Captain Vornis yelled. "Everyone to the emergency pods." The servants scrambled, grabbing what they could. Kalira ran below deck, her mind focused on one thing: the artifacts. She grabbed the ceremonial spear, the one her great-grandmother had used, then the hunting crown, made of ancient coral. Her hands worked fast, placing each item into a waterproof container. Above her, she heard Aramis roaring again, the sound full of fear. The yacht tilted further. She had to choose now: the artifacts or the animal. Kalira made her decision in a heartbeat. She sealed the container of artifacts and ran for the emergency pod. The ship was breaking apart around her. Captain Vornis pulled her into the pod and 2 servants jumped in after her, holding the container of relics. "Wait," one servant said. "The water lion." Through the pod's small window, Kalira could see Aramis on the tilting deck. The creature was scrambling for grip as the yacht began to capsize. His golden eyes were wide with panic, looking directly at her. "There's no room," Kalira said, and it was true. The pod was designed for 4 people, and they had the artifacts. "Launch the pod." "But Princess," the servant began. "Launch it now," Kalira commanded. The pod detached and shot away from the dying yacht. Through the window, Kalira watched as the vessel rolled completely over. Aramis disappeared into the churning water. Jake saw it all through his binoculars. He watched the emergency pod launch, saw the yacht flip, and saw the water lion thrown into the ocean. The creature surfaced, swimming hard, but the current was too strong. The storm was pulling it away from the other ships. "They left it," Jake said in disbelief. "They just left their animal to die." Patricia was beside him again. "It's not our concern, Sergeant. We have our own safety to worry about." But Jake was already moving to the equipment locker. He pulled out a flotation harness and a rescue line. "That thing's drowning. Morrison, stand down." "That's an order." Jake looked at his commanding officer, then back at the struggling creature in the water. Aramis was barely visible now, just a golden shape appearing and disappearing between waves. The water lion was tired, its swimming weaker. Jake thought of Max, of the trust in a dog's eyes. He thought of every animal he had ever known, how they depended on humans to protect them. He made his choice. "Sorry, ma'am. I can't." Before Patricia could stop him, Jake jumped over the railing into the angry sea. The water was shockingly cold. Jake gasped as he surfaced, already struggling against the current. He activated the flotation device built into his uniform and began swimming toward where he had last seen Aramis. The water lion surfaced nearby, coughing and choking. Its gills were working hard, but the creature was built for calm water hunting, not surviving a storm. When it saw Jake swimming closer, Aramis panicked and swam away. "Easy, easy," Jake called out, knowing the animal could not understand him. He had to get close enough to attach the harness. A wave crashed over both of them. Jake came up sputtering, searching for the water lion. "They're just a few meters away." He swam harder, fighting the exhaustion already creeping into his muscles. Aramis was going under, too tired to keep swimming. Jake reached the creature just as it started to sink. He dove down, grabbed a handful of the thick mane, and pulled. The water lion thrashed weakly, one paw catching Jake's arm and tearing his uniform. Blood clouded the water. Jake ignored the pain. He wrestled the flotation harness around Aramis's massive chest and clipped it secure. The device activated, bringing them both to the surface. Jake triggered the emergency beacon in his uniform. "Hang on, buddy," Jake gasped, holding onto the harness and the water lion. "Just hang on." Aramis's golden eyes met his, and for a moment the creature stopped struggling. It was as if the water lion understood that this strange creature was trying to help. Aramis went limp in the harness, trusting Jake to keep them both afloat. 2 minutes later, which felt like hours, the human survey ship pulled alongside them. Mechanical arms extended down, grabbing the harness and lifting both Jake and Aramis out of the water. They collapsed on the deck together, both breathing hard. Patricia stood over them, her face a mixture of anger and concern. "You just caused a diplomatic incident, Sergeant." Jake looked at Aramis, who was still alive, still breathing. "Worth it," he said. The medical bay of the human survey ship was small, designed for treating injured crew members, not massive alien creatures. Aramis took up most of the floor space, lying on his side while Jake cleaned the wounds on his legs and flanks. The water lion had cuts from debris in the water and was exhausted from fighting the storm. Jake worked carefully, running a scanner over the creature's body to check for internal injuries. His own arm was bandaged where Aramis's claws had caught him, but he barely noticed the pain. He was too focused on making sure the water lion would survive. "Easy there," Jake murmured, placing his hand on Aramis's head. The creature's breathing was still heavy, but it had calmed down significantly since being pulled from the water. "You're safe now." Aramis made a low rumbling sound, not quite a growl, not quite a purr. His golden eyes watched Jake's every movement. There was intelligence in those eyes, more than Jake had expected. This was not just an animal. This was a thinking, feeling being. Patricia entered the medical bay, her expression grim. She carried a data pad and did not look happy. "We need to talk, Morrison." Jake did not look up from his work. "Can it wait? I need to make sure there's no infection in these wounds." "No, it cannot wait." Patricia's voice was sharp. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I saved a drowning animal." "You stole royal property," Patricia corrected him. "That creature belongs to Princess Kalira. The Thessian Empire has already sent 3 messages demanding we return it immediately. The Empress herself is involved now." Jake finally looked at his commanding officer. "They threw him overboard. They chose some objects over a living creature. Their culture, their rules," Patricia said. "We're guests on this planet, Sergeant. Our entire mission here is about building good relationships with the Thessians. We need their cooperation to establish trade routes in this sector, and you've just insulted their princess in the most public way possible." "By saving a life?" "By implying she made the wrong choice," Patricia explained, her voice softening slightly. "In Thessian culture, animals are property. Valuable property, yes, but still just property. Those artifacts Kalira saved represent 1,000 years of history. From their perspective, she made the logical choice." Jake looked down at Aramis, who had relaxed enough to rest his massive head on Jake's knee. The water lion's eyes were half closed, trusting. And from my perspective, she abandoned something that depended on her. That trusted her. Patricia sighed and sat down on one of the medical chairs. "I understand how you feel. I really do. But we're not here to teach the Thessians our values. We're here to coexist with them. Maybe some values are universal," Jake said quietly. Before Patricia could respond, the communication system crackled to life. "Commander Donovan, we have incoming. The royal yacht is approaching. Princess Kalira is requesting permission to board." Patricia stood up quickly. "She's coming here?" "Yes, ma'am. And she sounds angry." Patricia looked at Jake. "Make yourself presentable, and for God's sake be respectful. Our entire mission might depend on the next hour." 10 minutes later, Princess Kalira stepped onto the human ship. She was flanked by 2 guards, both carrying ceremonial weapons that were very much functional. Her blue skin was still damp from the storm, and her hunting robes were stained with seawater. But she carried herself with absolute authority. Patricia met her at the airlock with a formal bow. "Your Highness, welcome aboard. On behalf of Earth's diplomatic corps, I apologize for any offense we may have caused." Kalira's dark eyes were cold. "Where is my property?" "The water lion is in our medical bay. My officer was treating its injuries. Take me there. Now." They walked through the narrow corridors of the ship, Kalira's guards having to duck to avoid hitting their heads on the low ceiling. The Thessians were taller than humans on average, built for a world with slightly lower gravity. When they entered the medical bay, Kalira stopped short. Aramis was still lying on the floor, but now the massive creature's head was resting in Jake's lap. Jake sat with his back against the wall, one hand gently stroking the water lion's mane. He had removed his uniform jacket and was down to his undershirt, showing the bandages on his arm and several other cuts he had gotten during the rescue. What shocked Kalira most was the sound Aramis was making. A deep, rumbling purr that she had never heard from him before. The water lion looked completely relaxed, content in a way he never had been at the palace. Jake looked up and immediately tried to stand, but Aramis was too heavy. "Your Highness, I'm sorry, he's pinning me down." Kalira stepped closer, her eyes moving between the human and her water lion. "He's purring, is he?" "I wasn't sure what that sound meant," Jake admitted. "He started making it about 20 minutes ago." "I have owned Aramis for 6 years," Kalira said slowly. "He has never purred for me." Jake managed to shift enough to stand up, though Aramis made a sound of complaint. The water lion lifted his head, saw Kalira, and his ears went back slightly, not aggressive but wary. "Your Highness, I apologize for taking your property without permission," Jake said, standing at attention despite his injuries. "But I couldn't watch him drown. I just couldn't." Kalira stared at him. "You risked your life. For an animal?" "Yes, ma'am. Why?" The question seemed genuine, not accusatory. Kalira really wanted to understand. Jake chose his words carefully. "Where I come from, we have a saying. We're responsible for what we tame. When we domesticate an animal, when we breed them to depend on us, we take on a duty to protect them. Aramis didn't ask to be born. He didn't choose to be unable to survive in the wild, but he trusts the people who own him to keep him safe. He is property, Kalira said, but there was less certainty in her voice. He's alive, Jake countered. He feels fear and pain. Look at his eyes. There's someone in there thinking and feeling. Maybe he's property by your law, but that doesn't change what he is. Kalira looked at Aramis again. The water lion was watching her now, those golden eyes fixed on her face. She had looked at him thousands of times before, but had she ever really seen him? She had fed him, groomed him, trained him for shows and hunts. But had she ever considered what he thought about? What he felt? The artifacts I saved, Kalira said slowly, they are irreplaceable. They connect us to our ancestors, to our history. Without them, part of our culture dies. I understand that, Jake said. And I'm not saying you made the wrong choice for your culture. But I made the only choice I could for mine. Kalira walked closer to Aramis. She reached out her hand and the water lion sniffed it cautiously. Then slowly he leaned his head into her palm. It was a gesture he had done countless times before, but Kalira felt it differently now. This was not obedience. This was trust. You could have let him die, she said to Jake. You had no obligation to him. He is not even your species. Neither are you, Jake pointed out. But if you were drowning, I'd jump in to save you too. It's not about species. It's about recognizing that someone needs help and choosing to give it. Kalira was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Patricia. Commander Donovan, I came here to demand the return of my property and an apology for your officer's interference. Patricia nodded. Of course, Your Highness. Sergeant Morrison will be disciplined for his actions. No, Kalira said, surprising everyone in the room. I want to change my demand. I want to understand. Understand what, Your Highness? Patricia asked carefully. Kalira looked at Jake. Explain to me why you would sacrifice yourself for something that cannot repay you. Show me how humans view these creatures. I need to understand this before I can rule my people properly. Jake glanced at Patricia, who looked equally surprised. Your Highness, I'm just a soldier. I'm not a diplomat or a teacher. But you are the one who jumped into the storm, Kalira said. You are the one my water lion trusts. So you are the one I will learn from. She turned to Patricia. I request permission to study at your embassy. I want to learn about Earth's relationship with animals. I want to see what my people are missing. Patricia recovered quickly from her shock. Of course, Your Highness. We would be honored to host you. But what about the Empress? Your mother? I will speak with her, Kalira said firmly. This is important. Someone had to prove that Aramis's trust was not misplaced, your sergeant said. Well, Aramis trusted me first, and I failed him. I need to understand why that matters. She knelt down beside the water lion, really looking at him for the first time. Aramis tilted his head, studying her with those intelligent golden eyes. Then he did something he had never done before. He licked her hand, a gesture of affection that made Kalira's breath catch. I see you now, she whispered to him. I am sorry I did not see you before. Jake watched the exchange and felt something shift in the room. This was bigger than a rescue. This was the beginning of something that could change an entire civilization's way of thinking. Patricia cleared her throat. I'll make arrangements for your Highness to visit the embassy. We have extensive files on Earth's domestic animals and their relationships with humans. Kalira stood up, her composure returning. Good. I will return tomorrow to begin my studies. Sergeant Morrison, you will be my teacher in this matter. Me? Your Highness, I'm really not qualified. You jumped into a storm to save a creature you did not know, Kalira said. You are the most qualified person I have ever met. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. The human embassy on Viridian Prime occupied a modest building near the coast, far smaller than the towering structures of the Thessian government. Jake stood in the main conference room, watching through the window as Princess Kalira's transport approached. He had not slept well, worrying about what he was supposed to teach an alien princess about something as simple as loving animals. Patricia stood beside him, reviewing notes on her datapad. Remember, Morrison, this is still a diplomatic situation. Be respectful, be clear, and for the love of everything, don't accidentally insult their entire culture. No pressure then, Jake muttered. The princess arrived with less ceremony than expected. Only 2 guards accompanied her, and she wore simple robes rather than her royal finery. Aramis walked beside her on a loose lead, the water lion moving calmly despite being in an unfamiliar place. What surprised Jake most was how Aramis reacted when he saw him. The water lion pulled forward on the lead, making a happy chirping sound Jake had never heard before. Kalira let the lead slip and Aramis bounded over to Jake, nearly knocking him down with enthusiastic headbutts. Okay, I missed you too, Jake laughed, scratching behind the creature's ears. Aramis purred loudly, the sound filling the room. Kalira watched with an expression Jake could not quite read. He did not sleep last night. He kept looking toward where your ship was docked. I didn't sleep great either, Jake admitted. I kept worrying about whether his injuries were healing properly. They are, Kalira said. Your treatment was excellent. Our own veterinarians were impressed with your work. Patricia gestured to the chairs arranged around a large table. Shall we begin? Sergeant Morrison has prepared some materials for you. They sat down, though Aramis refused to leave Jake's side, settling on the floor with his head resting on Jake's feet. Jake pulled up a holographic display showing images from Earth. I thought we'd start with dogs, Jake began. They're probably the best example of the human-animal bond. He showed images of different dog breeds, from tiny Chihuahuas to massive Great Danes. Kalira leaned forward, studying each one carefully. They look quite different from each other, she observed. Are they all the same species? Yes, all dogs are the same species. Humans bred them for different purposes over thousands of years, some for hunting, some for guarding, some just for companionship. Jake clicked to a video of a border collie herding sheep, then another of a search and rescue dog finding a person buried in rubble, then a guide dog leading a blind person through a crowded street. These creatures work for humans? Kalira asked. They work with humans, Jake corrected gently. There's a difference. We don't force them to do these things. They're bred and trained for it, yes, but they seem to genuinely enjoy their jobs. That border collie herding sheep, it's playing as much as working. It's fulfilling an instinct that makes it happy. He showed more videos. A soldier reuniting with his military working dog after a long deployment, both of them overjoyed. A therapy dog visiting sick children in a hospital, gentle and calm despite the chaos around it. An elderly person sitting quietly with a cat in their lap, both finding comfort in the companionship. Kalira watched in silence, her expression growing more thoughtful with each image. Why do they serve humans? What do they gain? Food, shelter, safety, Jake listed. But more than that, affection, purpose. Dogs are pack animals. They need to belong to a group. When they bond with humans, we become their pack. They're loyal to us the same way they'd be loyal to other dogs. He pulled up another video, one he had spent a long time choosing. It showed a dog in Japan waiting at a train station. The caption explained this was Hachiko, a dog who had waited for his deceased owner to return every day for nearly 10 years. The owner died, Jake explained quietly, but the dog didn't understand death. He just knew his human always came home on that train. So he waited, every single day until he died himself. Kalira stared at the image of the faithful dog. That is not logical. No, it's not, Jake agreed. Love rarely is, but that's what makes it valuable. He showed her more stories. Dogs who had traveled hundreds of miles to find their way home. Cats who had stayed by their sick owners' sides, refusing to leave. Horses who had carried injured riders to safety. Dolphins who had protected swimmers from sharks. These animals sacrifice for humans, Kalira said slowly. But you said love is not logical. So why do humans sacrifice for animals in return? Jake thought carefully about how to answer. Because the relationship goes both ways. When we domesticate an animal, we're entering into an agreement. We'll provide for them, protect them, give them good lives. In return, they give us their trust, their loyalty, sometimes their service. If we break our end of that agreement, what does that say about us? He pulled up one more video, and this one was harder for him to watch. It showed the aftermath of a natural disaster on Earth, rescue workers pulling dogs from collapsed buildings. Some of the dogs were injured, some were terrified, but the rescue workers treated each one with the same care they showed to human survivors. We could leave them, Jake said. Focus only on saving people. It would be more efficient. But we don't. Because those animals trusted humans to take care of them. They couldn't evacuate themselves. They depended on us. So we go back for them. Kalira was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Show me what happened when you chose to save Aramis instead of following your commander's orders." Jake glanced at Patricia, who nodded slightly. He pulled up his helmet camera footage from the rescue. Kalira watched as Jake dove into the churning water, fought through the waves, struggled to get the harness on Aramis while the exhausted water lion thrashed in panic. "You were injured," Kalira observed, pointing to the moment when Aramis's claws raked Jake's arm. "He was scared," Jake said simply. "He didn't understand I was trying to help. I don't blame him for that." The video showed Jake holding on to Aramis, keeping both their heads above water, waiting for rescue. His face was visible in the reflection of his helmet display. He looked exhausted, in pain, but determined. "You knew you would be punished," Kalira said. "I figured I'd probably be court-martialed." "Yeah," Jake admitted. "Sent back to Earth in disgrace, end of my career. But I'd do it again. Why?" Jake looked down at Aramis, still resting contentedly on his feet. "Because I'd have to live with the memory if I didn't. I'd have to remember watching him drown and doing nothing. That's not something I could carry." Kalira stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. "In my culture, we pride ourselves on logic, on making difficult choices without emotion clouding our judgment. The needs of the many over the needs of the few. The valuable over the replaceable." She turned back to face Jake. "But I have been thinking about what you said yesterday, about how we are responsible for what we tame. Aramis did not ask to be bred. His species was created by my people, modified from wild creatures thousands of years ago to be loyal, to be dependent on us. Every instinct in his body tells him to trust Thessians to protect him. And when you chose the artifacts over him?" Jake asked gently. "I betrayed every one of those instincts," Kalira said quietly. "I proved that his trust was meaningless, that he was just an object to me, less important than other objects." She walked back to the table and sat down. "Last night I could not stop thinking about the moment I saw him in the water. His eyes were looking at me. He was waiting for me to save him. And I left." Jake saw pain in her expression, real genuine pain. "You made the choice your culture taught you to make. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you Thessian. But it makes me wrong," Kalira said firmly. "I see that now. I have watched your videos. I have seen how humans value the trust animals place in them. And I realize my people have been missing something important." Patricia leaned forward. "Your Highness, you cannot change an entire culture overnight. The Thessian Empire has operated on these principles for thousands of years. Then perhaps it is time for change," Kalira said. "I am the crown princess. One day I will rule my people. And when I do, I want to rule them with the understanding that power comes with responsibility, that creating life, whether by birth or by breeding, creates obligation." She reached down and called to Aramis. The water lion looked at her, then at Jake, clearly torn. Jake gently pushed his massive head toward Kalira. "Go on, buddy. She's trying." Aramis walked slowly to Kalira and sat beside her. She placed her hand on his head, and this time she really felt the warmth of him, the steady breathing, the trust in the way he leaned into her touch. "I want to learn everything," she told Jake. "Not just about dogs and cats, everything. How humans train animals without cruelty, how you bond with them, what responsibilities you accept when you take ownership of a living creature." Jake spent the rest of the day teaching. He showed her videos of positive reinforcement training, explaining how rewarding good behavior worked better than punishing bad behavior. He explained the concept of enrichment, giving animals mental and physical stimulation to keep them healthy and happy. He talked about veterinary medicine, about the oath veterinarians took to prevent animal suffering. Kalira absorbed it all like a sponge, asking questions, taking notes, occasionally reaching down to touch Aramis as if reassuring herself he was still there. 3 weeks passed, and Princess Kalira came to the human embassy every day. She arrived early each morning with Aramis, stayed through the afternoon, and absorbed everything Jake could teach her about the human relationship with animals. But more than that, she began to observe the world around her with new eyes. On the 4th week, she invited Jake to visit the royal palace. "I want you to see how we keep animals," she explained. "And I want your honest opinion about what we are doing wrong." Jake accepted, though Patricia warned him to be diplomatic. "You're not there to judge them, Morrison. You're there to advise." The royal menagerie was enormous, taking up several acres of the palace grounds. Kalira led Jake through enclosures housing creatures he had never seen before. There were swimming serpents with rainbow scales, flying creatures that looked like crosses between birds and fish, and massive shelled animals that moved slowly through artificial tide pools. Jake noticed things immediately. The enclosures were clean and well-maintained, but they were bare. No toys, no hiding places, no environmental enrichment of any kind. The animals had food and water, but nothing else. They paced in repetitive patterns or sat motionless, staring at nothing. "What do you think?" Kalira asked. Jake chose his words carefully. "They're surviving, but they're not thriving. These animals are bored, maybe depressed. They have nothing to do all day but exist. What would humans do differently?" Jake pointed to a small primate-like creature sitting alone in a corner. "That species is social, right? It should have companions. And it needs things to manipulate with its hands, puzzles to solve. Its brain needs stimulation." They walked further, and Jake noticed a large aviary where colorful flying creatures perched on bare branches. Those birds need more than branches. They need materials to build nests even if they don't breed. They need different types of perches at different heights. They need food that makes them work a little, not just handed to them in bowls. Kalira listened intently, taking notes. Jake could see other Thessians watching them, courtiers and servants whispering to each other. The princess was spending time with a human, learning from him. It was scandalous. They reached the water lion enclosures last. There were 6 other water lions in the royal collection, each in its own large pool. They looked healthy but lonely, padding around their spaces with the same bored expression Jake had seen on zoo animals back on Earth. Aramis, walking beside Kalira, made a low sound. One of the other water lions perked up and called back. Aramis pulled toward the enclosure, clearly wanting to approach. "Can he interact with the others?" Jake asked. "It is not usually done," Kalira said. "Each water lion is kept separate to prevent fighting." "But they're social animals," Jake said. "Look at how excited they are to see each other." Kalira made a decision. She ordered the keepers to open one of the enclosures. A slightly smaller water lion came bounding out, and within seconds Aramis and the other creature were playing, chasing each other around the courtyard, wrestling gently. The keepers looked horrified. "Your Highness, they will damage each other." "They are playing," Kalira corrected firmly. "Watch, they are being careful. This is what they were meant to do." Jake watched the 2 water lions tumble together, making happy chirping and rumbling sounds. How long has it been since Aramis interacted with another of his kind? "Not since he was a cub," Kalira admitted. "I brought him to the palace at 6 months old. He has been alone ever since." 6 years alone, Jake said quietly. "Kalira, that must have been torture for him." The princess's face showed pain. "I did not know. None of us knew. We thought we were giving them good lives. Clean water, good food, medical care. Those things are important," Jake agreed. "But they're not enough. Animals need more than just physical health. They need mental health too. They need purpose, social bonds, stimulation. Just like people." Over the following days, Kalira began implementing changes. She ordered environmental enrichment for all the menagerie animals. She consulted with Jake about social groupings, moving solitary animals into appropriate group settings. She brought in specialists to create puzzle feeders and training programs. The changes did not go unnoticed. High Chancellor Vexian, an elderly Thessian with dark blue scales and cold eyes, came to observe one of Kalira's training sessions with Aramis. Jake was teaching her how to use positive reinforcement, rewarding the water lion with treats when he followed commands. "Princess, you are playing with your property," Vexian said with barely concealed contempt. "This is beneath your station." Kalira straightened, meeting his gaze evenly. "I am learning to be a better caretaker, Chancellor. There is nothing beneath my station about that." "You are learning human weakness," Vexian corrected. "These creatures are not our equals. They are tools, resources. This sentimentality the humans are teaching you will make you unfit to rule, or it will make me a better ruler," Kalira shot back. "One who understands that leadership means responsibility, not just power." Vexian's eyes narrowed. "The Empress should hear about this. You are being corrupted by alien influences." After he left, Jake saw Kalira's hands trembling slightly. "He's going to cause trouble, isn't he?" "Vexian has always opposed my succession," Kalira said. "He believes I am too young, too idealistic. This will give him ammunition." That evening, Kalira was summoned to her mother's chambers. Empress Valana sat on her throne, a figure of absolute authority. Vexian stood beside her, smug. "Daughter, I have received disturbing reports," Valana began. "You have been spending excessive time with the humans. You are changing royal protocols based on their advice. You are treating animals as if they have value beyond their use. Mother, I am learning things that can make our empire better, Kalira said. The humans understand the relationship between species in ways we do not. They have knowledge we can benefit from. They have weakness we should avoid, Vexian interjected. Your Majesty, the princess has been seen playing with her water lion, playing like a child. She speaks of animal feelings and needs as if they matter. This is not how a future empress should behave. Valana studied her daughter. Kalira, explain to me why you believe this is important. Kalira took a breath. Mother, we bred these creatures. We modified them over generations to depend on us, to trust us, to serve us. In doing so, we created an obligation. When we make something helpless, we become responsible for it. The humans understand this. They call it stewardship. We are already responsible, Valana said. We feed them, house them, keep them healthy. But we do not consider their happiness, Kalira pressed. We do not think about whether they suffer from loneliness or boredom. We treat them as objects when they are clearly more than that. Aramis has preferences, emotions, the capacity to form bonds. Ignoring that does not make it untrue, Vexian scoffed. Next, you will say we should give them voting rights. I am saying we should not cause unnecessary suffering, Kalira said firmly. I am saying that a civilization's greatness is measured not just by its achievements, but by its compassion. If we can be kind without cost, why would we choose cruelty? Valana was silent for a long moment. Then she said, You may continue your studies with the humans, but there will be limits. You will not make any official policy changes without my approval. Is that clear? Yes, Mother. And Kalira, Valana added, her voice softer. Be careful. Change frightens people even when it is good. Vexian is not the only one who sees your new ideas as a threat. Kalira bowed and left. She found Jake waiting outside the palace, having been told to stay nearby in case he was needed. Aramis sat beside him, the water lion having refused to leave when Kalira went inside. How did it go? Jake asked. I am allowed to continue learning, Kalira said. But my mother is wary, and Vexian is actively opposed. Change is always hard, Jake said, especially when it challenges the way people have always done things. Kalira sat down on the steps beside him. Aramis immediately put his head in her lap and she stroked his mane absently. On Earth, when humans first started protecting animals, was there resistance? Tons, Jake said. People thought it was ridiculous to care about animal welfare. They saw animals as property, just like your people do now. It took a long time to change those attitudes. There are still places on Earth where animals are treated badly. But it did change, Kalira said hopefully. It did, slowly, with a lot of effort from a lot of people who refused to give up. People who saw suffering and decided they could not ignore it anymore. Kalira looked at Jake. Did you ever think that jumping into that storm would lead to all this? Jake laughed. Honestly, I thought it would lead to me getting kicked out of the service and sent home. I definitely didn't expect to be teaching an alien princess about animal psychology. I am glad you jumped, Kalira said quietly. You saved more than just Aramis that day. You saved me from becoming someone I would not have been proud of. Over the next weeks, Kalira continued her work. She created enrichment programs for all the palace animals. She advocated for changes in how working animals were treated across the empire. She gave speeches about responsibility and stewardship, using the words Jake had taught her. Some people listened. Younger Thessians especially began to see animals differently, but others grew more hostile. Vexian's faction spread rumors. The attack came without warning. A Thessian research outpost on the northern continent was destroyed by an explosion, killing 17 scientists. Within hours, investigators found evidence planted at the scene. Human technology fragments and communication logs suggesting the attack had been coordinated with help from sympathizers within the Thessian government. Jake was in his quarters at the embassy when Patricia burst in. Pack your things now, we're being accused of terrorism. What? That's insane. I know it's insane, Patricia said tersely. But someone blew up a Thessian facility and made it look like we were involved. The evidence is circumstantial but damning. The Empress is demanding we hand over anyone who had contact with potential conspirators. Who are they saying conspired? Jake asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. You, Morrison. You've been meeting privately with Princess Kalira for months. They're claiming you radicalized her, turned her against her own people. and they're saying she helped plan the attack to destabilize the Empire. Jake's blood ran cold. That's not true. Kalira would never hurt anyone. I know that. You know that. But right now, the evidence says otherwise. Patricia grabbed his arm. Listen to me carefully. High Chancellor Vexian is behind this. It has his fingerprints all over it. He's trying to discredit both Kalira and our entire mission here. Before Jake could respond, alarms blared throughout the embassy. They ran to the command center where screens showed Thessian military forces surrounding the building. They're not waiting for cooperation, Patricia said grimly. They're preparing to breach. Ambassador Lopez, a middle-aged man with gray hair, stood at the center of the chaos coordinating responses. We need to contact Earth Command. This is an act of war. It's a setup, Jake insisted. Sir, we have to prove we weren't involved. With what evidence, Sergeant? They have fragments of our technology at the blast site. They have communication intercepts. Whether we did it or not, they have enough to justify their actions. The screens flickered and Empress Valana's face appeared. Her expression was cold fury. Ambassador Lopez, you have 1 hour to surrender Sergeant Jake Morrison and any other conspirators. If you do not comply, we will consider it an admission of guilt and act accordingly. The connection cut before Lopez could respond. Patricia pulled Jake aside. This is bad. If they take you, they'll execute you publicly to prove they're tough on terrorism. And it will destroy any chance of peace between our species. What about Kalira? Jake asked. If they're accusing her too. She's being held at the palace, Patricia said quietly. Under guard. Vexian is demanding she prove her loyalty to the Empire. How? Patricia's face was grim. By executing Aramis. In the traditional blood sacrifice ceremony, Vexian claims the water lion represents her corruption by human values. He's saying if she kills it publicly, it proves she's still Thessian. Jake felt sick. She won't do it. Not after everything she's learned. If she doesn't, Vexian will have her declared unfit to rule. He might even have her executed alongside you as a traitor. Jake paced the room, his mind racing. There has to be a way to prove this was a setup. Vexian wouldn't risk doing this unless he covered his tracks perfectly. But nobody's perfect. We have 45 minutes to figure it out, Patricia said. At the palace, Princess Kalira stood in chains before the royal court. High Chancellor Vexian addressed the assembled nobles, his voice dripping with false concern. Princess Kalira, you have been accused of conspiring with humans against your own people. The evidence is clear. Your close association with the human soldier Jake Morrison, your adoption of their weak philosophies, your attempts to undermine Thessian strength with talk of animal rights. All of this shows a pattern of disloyalty. I have done nothing wrong, Kalira said firmly. I have tried to make our empire better, more compassionate. That is not treason. Compassion is weakness, Vexian said, and weakness is betrayal. You have one chance to prove your loyalty. Tomorrow at dawn, you will perform the traditional blood sacrifice. You will execute your water lion before the entire court, demonstrating that you value Thessian tradition over human sentiment. Kalira's blood ran cold. No, I will not kill Aramis. Then you will be executed as a traitor, Vexian said simply, and the human Morrison will die with you. Your choice, princess. An animal's life or your own. Empress Valana sat on her throne, her expression unreadable. Daughter, this is the choice before you. I cannot protect you from the law. If you refuse, Vexian has enough support to push through a trial. And the evidence against you is strong. Mother, you know I would never betray our people. What I know does not matter, Valana said sadly. Only what can be proven. And right now, proof is against you. That night, Jake did something reckless. He left the embassy through an emergency tunnel and made his way to the palace. Getting in was harder than he expected, but he had learned the guard rotations during his months visiting Kalira. He found her in her chambers, sitting on the floor with Aramis. The water lion saw Jake first and made a happy sound. Kalira looked up, tears on her face. You should not be here, she said. If they find you, they will kill you immediately. I'm not letting you face this alone, Jake said, sitting beside her. And I'm definitely not letting you kill Aramis to save yourself. If I do not, we both die, Kalira said. And the reforms I wanted die with us. At least if I survive, I can eventually continue the work. By proving Vexian right, Jake challenged. By showing everyone that your compassion was fake, that you'll abandon your principles the moment they become inconvenient. Kalira wiped her eyes. What choice do I have? We prove Vexian set this up, Jake said. We have until dawn. Patricia is working on the technical evidence, but we need something more. Something that connects him directly to the attack. Aramis nuzzled against Kalira, sensing her distress. She held on to him tightly. I cannot lose him, Jake, not after everything, but I cannot let you die either. Then we don't give them the chance, Jake said. We fight. They spent hours planning. Jake contacted Patricia through an encrypted channel, coordinating their efforts. The human embassy had been analyzing the evidence and found inconsistencies. The technology fragments were older models that the embassy had decommissioned months ago. The communication logs had been altered, with timestamps that didn't match satellite records, but they needed more. They needed proof of Vexian's involvement. Kalira had an idea. Vexian uses a personal data vault for his sensitive communications. If he planned this, there will be evidence there. Can you access it? I am the Crown Princess. I have override codes for security systems, but using them would be noticed. We're out of time to worry about being noticed, Jake said. At midnight, Kalira accessed the palace security network. She had to work carefully. Vexian's people were watching for any sign of suspicious activity. But she had grown up in this palace, knew its systems better than anyone. She found the vault and began copying files. The download would take 20 minutes. Every second felt like an hour. 15 minutes in, alarms started blaring. They had been detected. Go, Kalira told Jake. Take Aramis and run. Not without you. Jake, please. If they catch you here, they will use it as proof of our conspiracy. Go, I can claim I was acting alone. Jake looked at her, saw the determination in her eyes. Then he made a decision that surprised both of them. No, we're doing this together. All or nothing. Guards burst into the chamber moments later, weapons raised. They found Princess Kalira at her terminal with Jake standing beside her. The data transfer completed just as the guards seized them. They were dragged before Empress Valana and High Chancellor Vexian. It was 3 a.m, but the full court had been assembled. Vexian looked triumphant, breaking into secured files consorting with the accused human terrorist. You have sealed your fate, Princess. I found your communications, Vexian, Kalira said clearly. Messages to mercenaries. Payment records. Instructions for planting the human technology at the blast site. You orchestrated everything. The court erupted in shocked murmurs. Vexian's face remained calm. Desperate lies from a traitor. You have no proof. I have your vault files, Kalira said. Everything is there. Files that were accessed illegally, Vexian countered. Files that could have been altered. This proves nothing except your guilt. Empress Valana raised her hand for silence. Daughter, do you have these files? Kalira held up a data crystal. Everything is here, Mother. The truth about who really betrayed our people. Valana looked at Vexian, then back at her daughter. This is a serious accusation, which is why we should examine the files carefully, Vexian said smoothly. But that will take time. Meanwhile, the situation with the humans grows more dangerous. We should proceed with the executions as planned. No, said Patricia's voice from the entrance. The human commander had arrived with a full security detail and a holographic projector. We should proceed with the truth. She activated the projector, displaying not just the files Kalira had stolen, but independent verification from human intelligence satellites. The images showed Vexian meeting with mercenaries, showed the transfer of decommissioned human technology to the blast site, showed everything. We've had our suspicions about internal Thessian political struggles, Patricia said. We've been monitoring communications for weeks. When